What has occurred in the last 9.5 or 10 years such that we can go from the same broadcaster who is currently under fire for what he said about Nikki Haley, that he could have come on and given 5 pieces of advice to black Americans that would also apply to white, Hispanic, and Asian Americans, by the way, that would lead to a better, more successful life. Yet if he said that same exact thing on the air today on CNN, he'd be under more fire than he is for saying that Nikki Haley was past her prime. And he might not be able to keep his job. What's happened? How has our culture evolved so quickly and so perniciously as a part of this woke virus that we are currently in the middle of, that you can't even recognize a clip that would have aired on CNN a few years ago? We've been following a story that I think is interesting as it pertains to Don Lemon. Our good buddy at CNN, Don Lemon, was not at work today because, he remains on vacation. I believe he is still down in Miami ever since he said that Nikki Haley was past her prime and that women in their 20s, 30s, and 40s were actually more in their prime then from a political perspective. He's been backpedaling. He's been apologizing. And there's now some discussion that he may lose his job over this. I'll discuss that in a moment. But I wanted to play for you CNN addressing the fact that Don Lemon was not going to be on the air earlier this morning. This is what it sounded like.
This is CNN Breaking News.
Good morning, everyone. We do begin with breaking news this morning. President Biden makes a surprise visit to Ukraine. I'm Poppy Harlow in New York here with Sarah Seidner. Caitlin Collins is live in Warsaw, Poland, where the president will be shortly. Don has the day off.
Don has the day off. Boom, right off the top. Interesting the way that they managed to handle that. Now, I don't believe in cancel culture, and I understand some of you out there are of the opinion that cancel culture should be evenly applied to Democrats just like it is applied to Republicans. I understand that argument. I think there's a great debate on it. I actually believe Republicans should be the party that is opposed to cancel culture. And if you need a succinct definition of cancel culture is the difference between saying, I disagree with you because, and just laying out an argument of why you disagree with something that someone else said, and I disagree with you, and you no longer have the right to be employed, you no longer have the right to be able to make a living, you no longer have the right to have this particular job, right? Cancel culture is about silencing debate, whereas debate itself, the marketplace of ideas, is about being robust and uninhibited. I bring that up because there is some suggestion that Don Lemon might end up losing his job. And I don't want people to lose their jobs. I defended Whoopi Goldberg when she made all of her continuing ridiculous statements. I certainly don't want my good friend Joy Behar, a.k.a. the dumbest person who talks in media every single day, to lose her job because of the wealth of material she provides us on this program to ridicule and lampoon her with on a daily basis. But I do think it's worth contemplating as Don Lemon remains under siege at CNN, as CNN continues to hit absolute decade low in viewerships, lowest number of viewers for CNN going back, and I believe morning show history almost for them, and the lowest overall ratings in 9 years for CNN since before Donald Trump ever got involved in politics. They clearly have no idea what to do, and they are floundering. But I wanted to play this clip because Don Lemon ended up being one of the leaders of the anti-Trump brigade. And he went full-on woke, and his show turned into left-wing advocacy during the Trump administration. And the amount of cheerleading that he did for the Biden administration was embarrassing before he lost his job. But I don't know how many of you have heard Don Lemon from back in 2013. This is July of 2013. Don Lemon on his CNN program during the Barack Obama administration, the second of the Barack Obama administrations. Just listen how different conversation was. Here is Don Lemon saying what needs to happen in the black community in order for things to get better. Listen.
Here's number 5. Pull up your pants. Walking around with your ass and your underwear showing is not okay. In fact, it comes from prison when they take away belts from the prisoner so that they can't make a weapon. Number 4 now is the N-word. By promoting the use of that word when it's not germane to the conversation, have you ever considered that you may just be perpetuating the stereotype the masser intended? Now number 3, respect where you live. Start small by not dropping trash, littering in your own communities. Number 2, finish school. You want to break the cycle of poverty? Stop telling kids are acting white because they go to school or they speak proper English. And number 1, and probably the most important, just because you can have a baby, it doesn't mean you should.
Okay, that was Don Lemon on CNN in 2013. How many of you listening to me right now, your jaw has dropped and you're thinking to yourself, you know what? I agree with everything Don Lemon just said. How does that happen? How do we go from what I just played for you from Don Lemon, primetime on CNN, making an argument about personal responsibility in the black community in particular there, but remember, personal responsibility, I believe, is the key to life success, period. The moment that you recognize that you yourself are responsible for all of your life choices and no one else out there is, and that you are not a victim, certainly not a victim of things that happened long before you were born, that your own individual agency will determine whether you succeed or fail. You are the vessel of your life's voyage. As soon as you accept that and recognize it, the amount of success that you are capable of is extraordinary, whether you're white, black, Asian, or Hispanic. I've said on this program, and I'm going to keep hammering it, do 3 things, and you're guaranteed not to be poor in America today. Graduate from high school, get married, don't have a kid until you're 25 years old. Now, some of you out there are going to have success despite the fact that you might not do those 3 things, right? Maybe you didn't graduate from high school and you've gone on to be tremendously successful in your life. Good for you. Maybe you got married when you were 16 years old and you had 4 kids before you were 24, 25, and you've been really successful. Good for you. Maybe you never got married at all and you've been super successful. All those things are great. But we can guarantee beyond a shadow of a doubt, in America today, white, black, Asian, Hispanic, no matter how poor you were born, no matter what life circumstances you began with, graduate from high school, get married, don't have a kid until you are 25 years old, obviously get a job, factors in there too, you will have a poverty rate of 0 in America. What has happened in America, in our media discourse, that what I just played from Don Lemon, about 9.5 years ago, that aired on CNN. If he shared those exact same opinions today on CNN, he would get fired. Think about that. What has occurred in the last 9.5 or 10 years such that we can go from the same broadcaster who is currently under fire for what he said about Nikki Haley, that he could have come on and given 5 pieces of advice to black Americans that would also apply to white, Hispanic, and Asian Americans, by the way, that would lead to a better, more successful life. Yet if he said that same exact thing on the air today on CNN, he'd be under more fire than he is for saying that Nikki Haley was past her prime. And he might not be able to keep his job. What's happened? How has our culture evolved so quickly? and so perniciously as a part of this woke virus that we are currently in the middle of, that you can't even recognize a clip that would have aired on CNN a few years ago. What's going on here? Now, I would submit to you, and I'm spending a lot of time thinking about this, that this is a function of social media to a large extent. That we have wildly overreacted to CNN. But I want to open up to social media. But I want to open up your phone, the phone lines here, and let you all react, because I'm actually curious what you would say. I just played that clip of Don Lemon 9.5 years ago. That was mainstream CNN. Nobody even blinked when it aired. Yet, I think most of you out there right now agree with me that if Don Lemon said all of those things, which are indisputably true today, as they were in 2013, that he probably would get fired. We're talking about Don Lemon and what has evolved, what has changed in the space of just 9.5 years, that clip I played of him on CNN advocating for personal responsibility in the black community would now be considered totally unacceptable to be aired on any network. And as if, like, we put the bat signal up for her, Whoopi Goldberg and her cohorts on The View decided that they needed to dive into Nikki Haley announcing for president. And Whoopi Goldberg managed to, in many ways, echo Don Lemon's argument just a bit more tastefully by arguing that, guess what? Nikki Haley is not a representative of generational change. Listen to this ridiculousness.
The Washington establishment has failed us over and over and over again. It's time for a new generation of leadership.
You're not a new generation. You're 51. What are you talking about?
Compared to DC, that's a new generation.
Well, but it's not a new generation. She may be younger than most of those people, but her rhetoric is the same.
Okay, she literally is a new generation. I mean, so you can argue that Nikki Haley's rhetoric is the same, and I would argue that almost all politicians sound the same, and that's why many people respond the way we do to politicians, because they're too practiced in what they say, and it sounds all like a gobbledygook of prepackaged commercials, right? I mean, Nikki Haley was on with us on Friday of last week, I think. She was great. But the first thing I said to our producers when we got off the radio was, that didn't sound like a conversation. It sounded like me asking a question and Nikki Haley hitting play on a pre-recorded answer that she had already perfected to virtually every question. Sometimes you misspeak. Sometimes you stumble over words when you are not scripted. And so many politicians are so scripted, you basically give them, hey, here's a question about the border. Here's the way that you should answer it so that you don't sound like an actual human, right? And you guys know what I'm talking about. That's one reason I think Trump cuts through to such an extent is he wasn't a professional politician for his entire life. He sounds like a relatively normal guy. And a lot of politicians do not. But when you're Whoopi Goldberg and you're arguing she's not a new generation, she is. She's Generation X. And as we've joked about on this program quite a lot, I am Generation X, and by and large, Generation X is just getting skipped over. We may go from the baby boomers having control of the government for basically 50 years, and then we jump right over Generation X. I'm the youngest member of Generation X sitting here talking to you right now at 43 years old. Now, I know Obama had power. I think Obama was the oldest member of Generation X. But this is, I believe, fairly significant. We're going to talk with Julie Kelly. I'll ask her that question, by the way, about this Don Lemon clip that we played. My theory is that social media has led to more BS than any invention in American history. And people started behaving in a performative fashion in a way that wasn't reflective of the real world. And so Things that almost everybody would agree with that Don Lemon said back in 2013 were suddenly disallowed in this modern era that we are moving into now. And as a result, we are steeped, I believe, in more artificiality than we have ever seen at any point in American history, where more so than anything else, what people are desperately craving is just honesty.